Well, hi, good evening to everybody. It's really nice to be speaking to you this evening. Uh, I'm just going to do a quick presentation and let you know about some quite exciting things that will be going on during the week, really. My background is I'm doing this as a non-day job thing. I've got a passionate interest in mobile, which you'll see if you start Googling me. I've got an interest in new and emerging technologies, and my background is primarily further education, but I've had a lot of experience in recent years in emerging technology in primary and latterly in secondary. I've got a very large interest in just what's coming next, and was fascinated by some of the stuff that David Metcalf was talking about last week. For my opening slide, you'll also see there's some weird things on there. There's a QR code to my blog. I couldn't resist the QR code. And also there's a photograph of a little graphic that somebody did of me on a charity bike ride I did last year when I did 1,000 miles in 10 days. So I'm just going to take you through a few slides. I've got about 34 slides. They're all up on SlideShare, which I'll put the URL at the end. And I'm also going to do a bundle of links from the presentation as well as I go through. If you want to just type a question in the chat box, the question mark in the chat box, your question will stop and we'll have an examination of the chat, or otherwise I'll go through. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm not tweeting as we illuminate because I can't do both at once. I'm not that clever. I'm AndyJB on Twitter. I want to start off with a little slide. Really, it's a very appalling picture of me at 7 there in a very nice nylon shirt. I'm now 48. I've got a picture of my son at 7 on top of what is the UK's highest mountain. And I just want to contrast his life and mine, really. I also want to say that I've still got a grandmother that's 102 years old and still alive, and I often am mindful to think about the changes that I've seen in my life and the changes she's seen in her life, and my son, and following on to my son, how that's going to change. And just want to talk to you a little bit about this. For anybody from the Netherlands who is participating this evening, I was born in 1962, the year the cassette tape was invented, I believe by Philips in the Netherlands. My son was born in 1999, 1 year AG after Google. And I think we get very excited by technologies, and we get made very aware of how fast technology is changing, and sometimes we don't even realize how fast it is changing. And just have a look at this slide here that I'm just putting up very quietly here. The picture at the top with the teddy bear is actually a USB stick. You can get them in a variety of models. There's a silly one there, but USB as a stick technology is only about 11 years old. And if you think now, USB is almost in many places in Europe and North America and Australasia being sort of circumvented by the cloud. Even more scary is to look at the fact that YouTube is 6 years old. Now, if you haven't, mobile and YouTube is probably one of the biggest mobile video. If you look at the statistics from the International Telecoms Union, is one of the fastest growing areas of mobile use. And then if we start looking at our lovely friends of Facebook, somebody mentioned earlier in the week, Facebook is a fascinating community. If you start looking at Facebook and if you see its growth in numbers. I was going to ask you the question, who was the second largest country on Facebook, but somebody answered it earlier in the MobiMOOC week. It's actually Indonesia. America being first, Indonesia being second. Quite an interesting thing to think about that. And then there's just a phenomenal growth of Google. Google is 12 years old. I put a link up this afternoon, sorry, to a presentation a little bit negative on Google from the University of Chicago about the future looking at Google and Amazon getting together. It's worth having a look at. It's interesting that Carol just was talking in the chat room about USB 3. Interestingly, if you're a Mac user, they've just put a new port in called a Thunder port, which is even faster than USB 3, and that's going to cause some interesting eruptions about how that's going to pan out. You're all very quiet on the chat. Now, I couldn't resist this one. I was going to put up a very depressing photograph about texting and driving, but I put up a little jokey one here. I think there's a cartoon there from the Gazette, which is an American magazine. But this is actually a photograph here of, on the left-hand side, of somebody hitting a lamppost while texting. Now I'm not sure if that's spoof or if it's real. I've looked on Google, and I think I've seen some pictures of them actually being used as the bumpers, the plastic wrappings around lampposts and other items as advertising hoardings. So I think it probably is real, actually. I'll put my hand up. I have walked into I have walked into something while texting, and I have almost tripped over while texting. But there we are. I also want to show you a couple of screens. You'll love these, and none of the only one that is made up is stolen is the one on the left hand side, which is the picture of a toilet and the phone. And yes, I have dropped a phone down a toilet. I'll admit that. But the one on the right is the one on the left is the funniest. This is the picture of my own iPod Touch, which my son was trying to guess the password and couldn't guess it. And it locked him out for an hour, I think. But the problem is the battery went flat, and it has reset my iPod timing till 2002. So I'm trying to work out a way of hacking around it at the moment as we speak to be able to use it again, because it decided to lock it out. The picture in the centre is my lovely HTC Hero mobile phone when a young boy with a rugby boot decided to stand on it while at a rugby game. I got that fixed for £30 as it happens. That's working perfectly and works very nicely, but it does show you a lovely cracked screen. So I've had my fair share of tech failure. I've got some pictures here which I'm going to just talk you through very quickly and give a plug to a couple of people that some of you may know. Yeah, I like the joke about how about the USB and Bluetooth combination required for mLearning. Yeah, the picture I said that on my posting that I talk about different devices. I'm quite keen on video, and this is a picture of on the very lower left-hand part of the screen of just a Sanyo Exacti camera that's just been dropped in a pint of water, which is people have seen me present as one of my party tricks. We're getting some amazing technologies now that you can do things that you wouldn't normally like to be able to do. There is a waterproof phone now, for example, that you would risk dropping in a glass of water or splashing. I'm not sure you put it through the washing machine yet. There's a picture also there of again my Hero, which is just an example of just how we become reliant on it. And also there's a picture of some of these. I don't know if any of you have seen these before. These are some of the Robo Sapiens. If you Google Robo Sapien or you Google some of the iPad AR drones, you can get devices that you can actually start to control via mobile devices. And I've got a great YouTube clip which I'll put up tomorrow about somebody who was using getting young people to program not just one of these robots dancing, but several of them together. A guy called Nicholas Hughes from Nightingale Primary School in the UK. Yeah, on the subject of Java from the level, I have actually taken somebody's mobile phone and dropped it in some water just to it works. It does work. The picture on the right is a picture which is just a silly one, really. We have this idea that mobile learning is a bit of a solo experience, and my dealing with key k12, or primary and secondary as we call it in the UK kids, is that mobile computing isn't at all solitary. Kids share devices. They sit around small screens. Now I've used a bad example of this isn't really what I would call mobile, because I'm not sure if laptop is mobile. I think it's more confusing than that. But this is a picture of two of my two young boys both playing on laptops and talking to each other at the same time, and meeting online on Club Penguin. So it's a bit, it just shows you, and it's that idea that people think it's a very solo experience, and they're actually online together in the same space virtually, but they're actually in the same place and they're talking about it. I know that John and David Metcalf have talked a lot about the OLPC project. I think there's been some great things happen through it. I think there's some great technologies that are going to impact in other areas, but I think it was premised a bit on solo learning, which I think quite a lot of the presenters have picked up. And I know John Traxler, who I know well, has come up with quite a lot of comments around that. I think it's quite interesting that we are we get really hung up on content, and content is great, and there's some great content being produced now, and the idea of self-produced content is getting much easier to share. But I still won't pretend it's easy. It's quite frustrating across devices and across platforms. Now there's some things happening on a technical level around HTML5 and things like that that are starting to make things a lot easier, but it's still not easy for what I would call a classroom teacher who's not necessarily a technical wizard. I think what's really interesting is location and context of the trends to watch. I'm a geographer by training, and I think it's really interesting to look at if you can take photographs, geographically tag them, or actually see where learners are with devices without engaging with their privacy are the things that really to watch.